See you.
Can you hear us?
Tell him he's got an email.
I now can hear you.
Great, good, terrific. We're going to call the Town of New Canaan Audit Committee into session. It's just slightly past 8:30 in the morning. The first item we have is on the subject of cybersecurity with the Board of Education. So we're going to go into executive session. And anybody on the phone or in the room that shouldn't be here, we've already identified you. You'll step out. And we'll keep the doors closed until this session is closed, and so we appreciate it.
Okay,
So with that, we're going into executive session.
you need just make a motion. Someone needs to make a motion, second it to go into executive. session.
Motion, is there a
Second.
second? Great, thank you.
Okay, and invite in, we've got Joe Centopani.
Can Joe be in this? I don't think so, right?
Probably not. Brian?
Not if he doesn't have a reason to be.
Yeah, he doesn't have a reason to be, so.
So half hour, Joe.
Half an hour, Joe, we'll see you.
You can have
Okay,
fun. for
hang on,
half an hour.
I need to move people.
Have another cup of coffee.
Great.
Just a moment. Who's NCITCK? Who is that?
Chris Kaiser.
Okay, he needs to be in. Andrew Brooks.
I
Hey, Bill,
don't think so.
can we just not deal with cybersecurity? Because I would have thought the auditors not joining cybersecurity discussions.
Well, he could, but it's, Tucker had said we should have everybody that's not critical. Yeah.
I would have thought in private sector, you guys audit committees deal with cybersecurity.
I mean, certainly welcome. I mean,
I mean,
it's fine with us. They do, we have had the, we
yeah,
have.
no,
have had
I
them
understand.
do
He could stay.
audits before. All right.
Want to have
That's
Tucker
fine.
invite him?
Yeah,
Right, you want me to
invite
read?
him back in.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
All right,
We-
This
He
is
got
the
voted
world
back
of,
in.
Remote
We're all-
executive
we're all very
sessions.
He got voted in.
Okay, he's voted back on the island.
but hold on, we're still live. I've got Andrew Brooks. Assuming Andrew should stay.
He's fine.
All right. Okay, so then, so hang on one second. I need to pause the recording.
Thank you. Just walk out.
We're back in action.
Thanks all. Back to the agenda.
Ah,
Bye.
ah.
Good go. Great. So I guess the second, now that we're back into the public session, the first item on the public agenda is the minutes of the June 7th Audit Committee meeting. So they were distributed. Acceptable to you, Rob?
Yes, yes.
And they're acceptable to you as well? The minutes of the June 7th meeting?
Yes, they're fine.
Great, thank you.
So I move we.
So, approved. Okay, the minutes are approved. Thank you very much. Next item, we discussion of the financials and the audit. I guess, and whoever you'd like with you.
We got.
So I guess we have Ann sent out some material earlier, for us to take a look at. So I think we can go through this rather quickly, but, spend as much time as necessary. Ann, why don't you briefly, maybe just first item we have on the agenda is, ACFR preparation and audit status. And then the next item is plan changes. And then any accounting and reporting issues. So maybe just take those three as a bucket.
In terms of the preparation of the financial report, by probably September 19th, we turned over the financials or the draft trial balances.
Got a little bit closer
Yep.
to you so they can hear on.
The draft trial balance was sent over to the PKF along
29th, you said.
September 19th.
No, okay.
Yep.
So it's, yeah.
At that point, we also then did a completion, there's an Excel spreadsheet, which is the format, the whole format for the actual statement with multiple tabs. So we went in and populated, there's a lot of population with that as the working document, turn that over. So now PKF is doing their work. So we do have someone coming out next week to come out and start going into the different documents that they need to go through it.
So I'm saying, I'm sorry, I was, you said September 19th, so this, I'm sort of just getting my mind wrapped around the months, so this is something PKF already has and they've been working on since September.
Yeah,
19th?
they need about 6 to 7 weeks from the point they get the trial balance from us to actually implement and do their processes that they need. And over multiple, it's not like people think the general fund, it's over multiple funds, multiple types of funds. Then we have the pension, the OPEB, there's a lot of different pieces, integral pieces with that we have to go through. So we have a checkoff list that we go through. We get a complete list of all the items that they're going to look for, what they need from us, whether it's the OPEB documents, the trust documents, and we go through that. And then they have their selections of what they want. Every time they hit another area, they have their selection. So we're going through that process right now at the same time as the finance staff is, as I mentioned, we put the fixed assets were taken finally from the Excel spreadsheet. They were put into Munis, uploaded, and we're now entering in the new assets. It's we have I forget how many offhand. It's about $8 million of new assets, and it's about $6-7 million of CIP. So we're in that process right now. So what I had mentioned that we would probably turn over, because the MD&A is the big document for this committee. So we'll probably turn over, have the departments put their changes in and turn it over to you to look at the formatting. The numbers will not be in there. So at the beginning of November, so you can start looking at the different things and how, if you want different formats on the changes for that.
And what's the date? What do you think?
We're thinking like November 3rd to turn that over.
Mhm.
We need all the departments and some other changes we want to look at.
And even preliminary numbers.
There won't be preliminary numbers at that point. They would,
No.
there won't be preliminary numbers at that point. On top of then, at that point, we'll then start working towards getting the numbers as finalized as possible. Once the audit is complete, the audit work is complete, we then have to then tie out the numbers with what's in the book, because we'll have journal entries going back and forth. We need to make sure that those journal entries are in sync. So we take the file back to compare all the trial balances for every fund.
So, two things, the fixed assets, you said you record them, did I pick up on that?
They're being recorded in Munis now. They were on we kept them in the past on an Excel spreadsheet. So now we're actually recording them in the.
You don't record them during the course of the year?
No, because otherwise you're loading them all as CIPs until the point they become an asset, versus you take the asset at the end of the year and load it. Because you continuously have to wait until you shut off your accounts payable, you can't get the full balance. So you'll be continuously adding it into a CIP, which doesn't make sense, versus you have a building that was sold for $9 million, you're loading a $9 million. So we can do some during the year, but most of the time it's going to be at the end, because you need that final accounts payable to.
So the department heads don't see any balance sheet information during the course of the year?
They don't see balance sheet, no.
They don't see balance sheet information, so someone,
In terms of, when you say balance sheet, in terms of what?
well, fix that, I mean, just if someone's running it, if Works is running, Sucker's running something, and he doesn't see if an asset's added or roads paved or something, that doesn't get on his books and record, he never sees that?
They wouldn't see that. That's on a totally different fund. For us, it's not in the general fund. It's in a 9,000 fund. So what we do get, and we changed the process this year, in the past, roads were just loaded up as one lump sum. What we're getting now from DPW, which is extremely helpful, is we're getting how much was paved in that fiscal year related to the expense in that paving account. So we can actually load it up by street now, so that when they repave it, possibly 10 years down the road, when we send out to say what's still, is there any assets to be disposed of at this point, they can tell us those assets. That's what we did last year. There was a big push we sent out lists to all the departments to say what's disposed. and there was a massive listing of things that were disposed of.
In the MD&A, which is, most of what's in the MD&A, I'm just trying to think, I think, a big piece of it is income statement material. And,
At the front, first couple, and then there's a lot about the departments.
yeah, so they don't have any preliminary numbers that they could just put in there? I mean, by November?
No, we won't have preliminary numbers
Until what? Till the audit's finished.
till the audit's finished, because we'll still be putting in entries and and changing, changing schedules. So I think November, that putting it, I offered the 3rd because I know there's a lot of changing the format last year. We spent a lot of time on the format and wording. So I thought that would be to get that out to you first, so you can look at that wording and formatting, and then at least we'll have that down for when the financials are done. And then we can just look at the numbers to explain them and make sure they're appropriate.
Yeah, it's, I guess, checking the numbers is more mechanical.
Right, than what we need on the MD&A.
If we can get the wording button down.
But to develop the wording, you gotta have some idea. of
Sometimes
what
with
the
numbers,
numbers-
Yeah.
whether they're up or down.
Well, a lot of it, we had a lot of changes in how we liked to
Yeah,
see
no, I just-
what schedules wanted to be in what order. Like, that's where I'm looking at from that
I was
capacity.
just trying to, when we talked about, I hadn't thought about it this way before, but we talked about department heads writing something or, editing it. I was thinking of the number up or down, but more importantly to me, November is 4 months, if I got it, 5 months after year end. By that time, you would think a department head might have some sense of what their numbers were.
It's not their
Maybe not.
numbers. It's not, they don't put the numbers in. The numbers are populated from the.
I understand that, I understand that.
And they're not just plain, as I said, we have, budgetary basis, a modified accrual and accrual basis. So the schedules are all different schedules that the department heads would not be involved in.
Right.
Theirs are more, what about their department? What have they done? What does their department do? It's kind of like, as you call it, the sales
Yeah.
document.
So did you say that what's in CIP at the end of the year? You load that into munis?
What we're doing with CIP, we will load it after the audit's done, the CIP, because I don't want to load it. And if some of that CIP, because right now it's one number for a project,
Right.
and in that project may have multiple components that don't belong in machinery or equipment or
Mhm.
furniture and fixtures. So we need a deeper analysis of the previous CIPs, because we had over 7 million CIP. The projects are still open,
Yeah,
but I want to be able to, if I load it, I want to carve it so that this piece goes to the right one, because when you load a CIP, if you load it as one, when you activate it, it comes in as one asset. When
Yeah,
that
that's-
one asset, so
yeah.
it may need to be spread over 3 different categories.
You
So-
actually load the CIP in the system?
Yes, you can load the CIP in the system,
You do
but
that.
we want to make sure it's loaded the correct way to separate the components of that particular project. Yeah.
okay.
You could really never do 6-month financial statements, right? I mean, if you wanted to have a set of financial statements at the end of the 6 months, you really couldn't do that.
I'm not sure I understand.
Well, I mean, right now, we get financial statements at the end of the year, in November. After we do all the accruals and we book everything. So you couldn't do a balance sheet and income statement.
I can do one at any time, but it won't be final.
Mm.
So we're still making
What-
changes now to the P&L. So, there's entries that need to, that come up.
For example, come November 3rd. What would you expect is still open from that
Well,
could?
the audit's
that
still
could
open, so-
create- That could create changes. to the number?
If we have a desk finding from the ESF up at the state. If
Is that ever happened?
I don't know. I don't
don't
know the
know.
history, but
Yeah, so you would expect,
Yeah, I'm anticipating an update to I'll discuss it a little bit later, but I already know of one update that will have to be made.
so there'll be entries that are needed. Are
And
they,
that's a normal
is that typically
process.
needed, or could that just carry forward to next year? It's not big.
It's related to full year 23. So
that's why the timeline, just so, and I don't jump in if I'm speaking out of turn here. For
Just
the
the
Board of
basic.
Ed, their filing deadline is the end of August. And if something comes in, they're at the disadvantage where if something comes in for the town, we can accrue it. For the Board of Ed, they finalize their books at the end of August. So anything that comes up that's significant, they have to open it up and put it in as an accrual, which that's the situation that we needed to get an entry in, and it's an appropriate entry to get in. So that can come up. So We do, as I said, a 60-day look back. You look back at all your accruals and say, okay, your receivables and deferrals, they all have to get in. And then until the Board of Ed, they close their books, then we reconcile and move forward. I can run financials at any time on my side, but not audited financials, not
Yeah,
that
yeah.
level.
So for example, who comes back with, just out of curiosity, who comes back with changes to what you're doing?
Subsequent to when we closed the books at the end of August, we actually had a tentative agreement with our custodial maintenance staff for a retro in 23. In other words, we just had we have a tentative agreement that just became, we closed the tentative agreement mid-September, which called for an $87,000 increase to 23 salary. But not only did we set the salaries for the next couple of years.
So it was a retroactive,
That needs to be
kind of
accrued back.
increase.
Yep.
So that was just events. It's not
Yeah.
somebody else's review of,
Yeah.
somebody else reviews. It's just
Something
events that
that-
happen, right? It's just,
Right.
you're saying you leave it open for, I mean, obviously if something happens. Is there ever a cutoff? There's never a cutoff, just the end of the year?
I know the state is going to open up, I guess it's like early November. We need to get it reflected in the system then.
So the state impacts. So the state
Yeah.
could do something that you've got to book to last year.
But yeah,
No.
I don't know, would you prefer to come up to just by the microphone or just, I just don't want to put people in a difficult position, but
Yeah,
I
you
think
can't
the,
hear.
I think,
Funny.
just in terms of, I would say it's, in that aspect, state accounting or government accounting is no different than accounting in general, right? There's always, I mean, every company in the world has, new events come up and sometimes they're retroactive, sometimes you make an estimate, right? You probably, if I had to guess, you and Brian probably within 5 cents of what the estimate was going to be. I mean, as a compliment, because I know you guys met,
We should have accrued it. There's no question about it.
you could have accrued it.
It
Yeah,
didn't happen.
that's my point.
Mistake.
Yeah.
Just didn't
Yeah,
happen.
that's my point.
Okay, understand.
And
You're absolutely
but
right.
probably some of it gets into, if you get it in the right year, it gets into budgetary things for the next year. There's probably some intramural stuff behind, which is fine, which is, part of the process. But it's not the accounting system because,
Right.
I mean, that could be, yeah,
At
exactly.
this point in time, are there more potential adjustments?
It's well, I mean, part of the desk audit, the state could say, pick out something that we may need to adjust for.
Yeah.
So the state does an audit of
Yeah, the
your
state, yeah.
stuff,
But as far as
but I
similar
don't
to
know.
the.
And typically we might
$87,000,
get
no,
some.
not aware.
When the state does an audit, I mean, they'd have to find something wrong for you to adjust it, right?
That's pretty
Something
bad.
misclassified.
Misclassified, yeah, I've experienced that where
Yeah,
the medical has been a different way. They wanted to see it a different
But
way.
you guys don't allow that to happen, right?
No.
No, I don't think so.
Supplies and textbooks.
Yeah. Okay, I got it. That's fine. All right,
So when the town
Appreciate it.
continuously has different
Okay.
entries. that
Yeah, that's
come in, As invoices come in.
okay, good.
So the audit is progressing or?
We're in the
just
middle
starting?
of the audit process right now. So the request for documentation, copies of invoices, things that are needed. Like I said, there's a PKF employee coming down next week to go through a lot of documentation. And we have a portal. So as soon as we have that list or we have the list that they need, we go through, update what it is we need and we put it into the portal. So it's
So-
ongoing.
So
We have any,
so quickly from Joe.
yeah, well, I was just gonna ask,
Joe,
but
do you-
also, the same thing for Joe, but then also any internal control concerns, which, is, the topic we're talking about, but let's fold into that internal control concerns or, any assessment problems we have in that area or any new accounting developments that'll be coming up that'll delay where we are. So I don't know whether, Joe, do you want to answer that or?
I'll have Catherine answer kind of, the internal control, because she's more hands-on. She can speak to that. I'm not aware of anything, but she's more,
No, so far we haven't seen anything come up. We haven't seen any internal control issues.
How far along in the process are you? Are you, the first quarter or are you in the? Middle of the game, or you're at the last quarter?
In terms of the audit, I'd say we're in the first quarter, since we received the trial balances first and then the financial statements about a week after that. So we've been working on tying those out, working on some of the work papers we can do in the office. And then, like Ann said, our audit team will be out next week to do some more detailed testing on site.
What might be a control concern that could come up when you're doing the audit remotely, or, you know, coming into, I mean, given where we are in the process, what, just give me an example of something that you see in some other town that could come up in this part of the process. I guess I'm having difficulty understanding, you know, what we might identify as a control weakness, given it's October 19th, 15th.
Not quite sure I understand the question. I don't know, Joe, do you have?
You don't have any control weaknesses yet. And we're gonna be finished in 6 weeks. So am I to infer from that you're not gonna have any control weaknesses in the next 6 weeks, or might something come up in the next 6 weeks? I mean, what could that be if you're just really looking at numbers and putting together the financial statements?
Yeah, I'm most likely the controls, because they're not any different than last year. We wouldn't expect anything. The only control thing that may come up is just if we're doing specific testing and we don't find approvals or that type of thing. But because the system is kind of still the system and nothing's changed, most likely what we might identify is something that is more, you know, hopefully just isolated based upon our transaction testing. But we've kind of already done the review of controls as part of planning and risk assessment and all that. So we wouldn't expect an internal control issue. There might be some other matter based upon testing the balances.
Yeah, I think the one thing I've seen in other towns is when we test for unrecorded liabilities, sometimes we found issues with cutoff that expenditures were recorded in the subsequent year when really they were for the year being audited. I don't anticipate that being the case. I don't think we've had issues in prior years, but that is something that could potentially come up. But like Joe said, I don't anticipate any internal control issues.
Could anybody have an liability when what it is 6 months after your event? Give me an example without naming the town. How could you have an unrecorded liability? I mean, if you don't know it within 6 months or 5 months.
Well, it's more it got recorded in the wrong year. So it got recorded in, say, fiscal 24 instead of 23.
Put in the wrong period, okay.
Yes.
Accounts payable,
Yeah.
and it really related to the prior year and it wasn't picked
Okay.
up.
Recorded it in July.
And
so
yeah,
June.
and you paid it in
So it recorded, but
August, September.
supposed to be unrecorded, recorded in the wrong period.
So you're currently obviously monitoring the current stuff to see if.
Well, that's what I say, when I talk about we cut off our AP, because the AP goes through, we post it. Once we cut off the AP and close the purchase order, we then track every invoice at that point to say, and the departments put on it, we ask them, was it received before June 30th? Or the service done? Yes, then we.
Good. How about new developments? New accounting rules, anything else that we should be seeing as I think last time we talked about this, I think it was no, but is there anything, last year we had leases, this year we don't have anything?
SPITA. So we have the subscription-based technology,
Yeah.
I have to think of that acronym, information technology agreements. So we have, that's this year, so we have to track all those.
That's a almost like a leasing thing, right?
It is, but it's separate, it's separate in return, in regards
So
to
we're,
the type of document now that we're tracking. It's more technology based.
you have any of those?
We potentially, I think, was it four? Potentially we have 4.
So you're,
I'm not
so
sure.
you're
on the board.
potentially booking for,
Yes,
but it
we're
won't
going.
probably
for-
not big, right?
I don't remember. Some of the-
Yeah, in terms of dollars.
Big ones. We put OpenGov on there. Some of them were related to IT,
Like
cybersecurity.
cybersecurity ones. So it's all.
So what is this, just a technology contract?
It's similar to
Capline.
leases, but it's based on technology contracts and then whether they're, can you really get rid of them at the end of the year? Even though it might be a 3-year, is it gone in a year? Well, then you're not going to address it. So we had to go through each one.
So it's similar to capitalizing
It's similar,
It's
it's similar,
this
but it's
contract,
another,
right?
it's another one we had to.
Software
introduce this
contract,
year.
right?
Yeah.
I think.
So how about any, so I think so if I'm not mistaken, we've agreed that we'll get the MD&A on November 3rd. We've agreed, I think that we would get the draft financial statements on November 21st. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they'll get
Yeah,
emailed to
and
everyone.
as we've talked to the extent it could be a little
A
earlier.
little bit early
No,
because,
if we can get it early,
If we
we
can.
certainly will. No,
I
we
know,
certainly will.
Yeah.
That would be a nice goal to have,
yeah,
but
just that,
that's our deadline.
that's fine, because you got that's
And,
Thanksgiving.
and
week.
along with that, it'd be good if there could be a highlight of some of the major, any significant changes that might be in the document.
For the
I
Friday.
don't know if it'd just be a 150-page document or
Well, that's what
or-
it's going
or
to be, but the.
somehow to
MD&A will
highlight-
populate
somehow
at
to-
That point with the MD&A will have the main highlights in there.
Joe,
So that it
Joe
takes-
does the draft of the report, right? He does the report. I mean,
We helped populate the actual report, then there's a lot of tie out that has to go on behind the scenes. Now, this is my first year to actually see that report, how it's put together. And then they put it together. We do the schedules, but the heavy lifting after that point
does
is,
he enters the data into the schedules?
we enter the data into most of the schedules, the Excel schedules. There are some that we can't do. Then we have the schedules at the back of the book, so we do some of the RSIs, things like that.
So Joe, does your system, because I assume eventually all this gets loaded into your system, does your system provide a mechanism to redline changes that are made from last year's document?
The Excel, no, it doesn't have that capability, but we certainly could tell you what's different, like the software subscription, there'll be a policy note added, there'll be a specific footnote, it'll show up in that, so I don't think it'd be that hard to tell you the things that are significant changes. Right now, that's probably the biggest one.
okay, yeah,
You
that
could
would,
highlight that, that'd be helpful.
that would be helpful.
Yeah, we can do that.
So we've been through, just trying to make sure we're covering everything on the agenda. Any new accounting developments? How about state developments, reimbursement developments, either on the Board of Ed or?
So on the town side, between FEMA and COVID for prior years, we received over $700,000 in different reimbursements for whether a storm related or COVID. The US Treasury, or they opened up the window of what we can apply for. They had certain time periods that were blocked out. Well, they opened them back up and said we could reapply,
Right.
which happened, and we got more reimbursements for that.
Cool.
And the
Come on, the Board of Ed, anything?
couple,
The only thing new news, as far as grants goes, we applied for a security grant, the Board of Finance and Town Council approved $937,000 security upgrades. We did apply for, I think it's the 6th round of security grants from the state. It was $10 million across 169 districts. Most of it goes to the cities. And if you received a grant before, the odds are pretty low that you're gonna succeed in getting a grant. And sure enough, we found out about a week ago that we were not gonna get it. It was a 20% reimbursement grant, so would have amounted to, about $180,000. So if you didn't get it.
So that is, I mean, it's somewhat neutral to the Board of Ed in the sense that
Still fully funded.
it's still fully funded. It's just a matter whether the town does it or the state does it. Is that right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Uh,
I mean, you're gonna
we're
spend
We're
enough,
gonna do it. It's a
just paying,
reimbursement
who
grant.
pays it? Yeah.
right, just a matter who pays it.
That revenue is not in the budget, was it?
No.
Yeah, cool.
The couple, I don't know the dollar amount or the name of the thing, but the couple $1 million that was given to the town to spend,
ARPA,
yeah,
we have both tranches of the ARPA right now, so we do have them.
so you.
We have it's 5.9 million in total. So we do
whatever
have
it
We
was.
have all both sides of it.
And so all that's been paid,
No, there's still ongoing. It has to be committed by December 24.
It's gonna get extended.
No, it
what's
is.
the accounting for that?
It's, well, when you say accounting, how we pay it out, or
Just how you book it, the six,
Well, at
6
the-
million, let's say it's 6 million, is that
The-
all booked?
no, the revenue obviously is, but on the expense side,
So the revenue, so
We've received the revenue. We've
So you-
received 5.9 million.
So you've received
That's in
it,
the grant fund.
debit, cash, credit, revenue, I guess.
Yes,
And that's already done.
that's done
Okay.
as they came in.
As
And then
to-
the expense side is based on the projects that have been approved.
Right.
Um,
So the money's either sitting in the bank or it's been spent.
yeah, I have it in a money market because it's a grant money, so I make sure the interest is segregated.
Okay, so all that has flowed through and there's no more to come after June 30th. Money,
From ARPA, no, not that I'm aware of, unless
okay,
you know of any more
so
buckets.
it's all
but-
reflected in the financials.
Yes, it'll be it's in the grant fund. It has been 2-3 years now, 2 years.
Okay.
But now all received. Some was received this
The
year.
first tranche was received in 22, the second tranche was 23.
Okay.
Good.
And,
All right.
and so maybe we could just talk about, or maybe we're gonna get to that. Go ahead. The timing of our. Go ahead.
Is that what you referring to?
I think so. Timeline.
Yeah, so then so we should be pretty, so your suggestion would be that if we get it by November 21st, we get back to you. We think we audit committee meeting scheduled for December 1st. We would, hopefully get you our comments back before the December 1st meeting, because, I don't think we want to. I mean, there might be one or two bigger items we have to review here, but we don't want to be reviewing detailed comments here, I don't think.
No, not at that point. If we
Yeah.
can, if the MD&A is done from a formatting standpoint and wording, and then once we get the numbers in, obviously that will change slightly the
That'll be the
explanation.
21st.
And then, as with last year, we can just email them separately.
Right.
And I can compile them so we can say who changed what.
Right.
But don't put everybody on the same email, just keep it
Yeah.
separate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I can get that so that they're compiled for December 1st in there to make sure, can send an email in advance to say, here's all the changes everybody asked for or agreed to. Here's the changes. So by December 1st, we know what most of them.
Or
are.
if you want, if it's easier rather than the email traffic, because sometimes I understand why you don't want to do everybody in the same email, but it might be better just to get together and share changes, because, if Rob suggests a change, it might be a great change, but I might not agree with it. Or if I suggest one, it might be a great change, he might not agree, so it
But
might
you-
be good.
But you could distribute to everybody. And then everybody just send back to you individually.
Yes,
Okay,
Yep.
Which I think.
I can
would be
just
the
put them
better.
together and then send it back out and then,
That's your
keep it-
cucumbers.
Yeah, you sent them through you, didn't we?
So I think if,
Yeah.
so if we get on 21st, we get back comments to you by,
at any point, at every point, because I'll update them as we go along. So.
I know, but by what?
Middle of the next
Not,
week.
not
Well, by-
December 15th, right?
Well, no, December 1st is your next meeting. So I'm assuming
So-
that we'd have changes by then
okay,
into the
so we'll
document.
get back to you, and then December 1st, we'll have a meeting, hopefully.
Will there be changes? Will there be some other document we'll see in advance of the first?
In other words, if we give you the changes, how
How do we?
are we gonna
something?
see the changes implemented into the document? Because you want to send it to the town council on the 6th. So how are we gonna, where are we gonna look?
Well,
at
no, I
those
think we
changes?
change the boards probably by the 8th, because if you need 4 days in between there, we probably need another meeting between the 1st and before we send it out by the 8th. I had originally asked for possibly a second one in November, but I think it's better to have one in December, looking back at other schedules. Possibly having one the week of the 4th to finalize it.
Finalize the document. you would
document
then- you would
itself.
Then send to the,
Then we'd send to the boards by the 8th.
Okay.
Yeah, for their meetings on the 12th and the 13th and 14th. No, 12th and 13th, I think.
So you're suggesting keeping the first?
and
Yeah, no, I
adding-
definitely think we should keep the first.
and add,
Unless-
add a date and just the following week,
Following
around the
week,
5th
yeah.
to 6th.
Yep.
Okay, why don't we do that?
Yeah,
Okay.
So how about? Are we, everybody okay?
I'm around that week.
We could probably just do a telephonic one. We don't have to
Right.
Zoom call. That's good.
Make it easy.
We'll get a schedule. Okay, so it sounds like we're moving along.
So,
I think that's it for the numbers. I think that's it for the report, and I think that's it for the schedule. Then we'll send it to the town council, their meeting on what, the 13th or something like that?
I have the
Mhm.
13th and 14th, but I might have
Yeah.
that wrong.
13th,
Or is it 12 and 13?
13th.
Yeah, and then they would
Finance.
presumably I'm sorry, the Board of when does the Board of Finance do
Well,
this?
They're usually the Tuesday, so that should be the 12th, actually.
So the Board of Finance has to see it first and then they approve it and then we'll do whatever they do with it, and then it goes to the town council the next day.
Yes.
That works. Okay, good. And you'll alert both of those bodies if you haven't already done so, that's when they'll be getting it. Good.
Yeah, we talked about
Cool.
it with
Great.
the Board of Finance last night.
Okay, good. And then, Joe, on a PCAOB, I'm sure it was your most favorite report this year. Why don't you tell us what the PCAOB said about the quality of your work?
Public.
Oh, again, just to be a.
Get close to the mic so we can hear you. It's the PCOB is the Public Accounting Oversight Board, something like that. Public
Company.
Company Audit Oversight Board, which came into effect in around 2002. And they audit the work of all of the firms, and all of the firms get a report, and all of the firms have comments in the report. And the comments, I don't think I've ever seen a report that hasn't had at least 25 comments in it. I'm not being critical of it. I mean, it's quality of the work of the profession has gotten good, and no one likes to be audited. No one likes to have constructive suggestions, but it actually is a good process. It's been around for hundreds of years, and to be evaluated, and you got to take it seriously. And so, Joe, tell us a little bit about the report and whatever else you want to say about it.
All right, as far as the report, we had 2 findings. So if the average is 25, I think we did really well. And it's related to a real estate client, a single client. And it has nothing to, it's a QC process, but it doesn't relate at all to the government practice. So we're really not involved in that world. As far as that, we have a different QC process than that PCOB report. So
What was the comment?
the comment related to,
Are you talking about Part A or the comments in Part B? Or I may have the A and B wrong, but there are public comments and private comments.
yeah, the A comments related to deficiencies in internal control related to revenue and long-lived assets.
This was a specific client?
Yes, one specific client.
Okay.
And I guess it had to do with the risk assessment, identifying risk and not mapping clearly to the auditor.
Okay. And what about the Part B? I realize that's private, you can't share it all, but how'd you all do in that section?
Yeah, I don't. One of the 2 audits reviewed, the firm did not make required communications to management. 2 audits, engagement team performed procedures to determine whether or not matters were critical to the audit, but did not include the matters in the communication to the audit committee.
What was that about? What was the failure in communicating to the audit committee?
Critical, I think engagement team performed procedures to determine whether or not matters were critical to audit matters, but in performing the procedures did not include the matters in communication to the audit committee. So it sounds like, again, because I just have the public report also. So they identified something and didn't put it in the communication to the audit committee.
It was
With
not
the audit, it's just the
not in the
communication.
communication to the audit committee. Something that was not in the communication?
Yeah, they might have identified a risk area they didn't communicate to the audit committee.
You communicate everything to us, Joe? That you should?
Of course, yes. So you do get the preliminary communications as far as that, and then you get the final communications at the end of the audit. So
I mean, we don't want anything to be wrong, but if there's any concerns, we would hear it from you, right? I mean, I think.
oh yeah, absolutely. We'd be waiting for a report. If there was a concern, you would hear it. I had to wait until the audit was done or at the are waiting for final communication. So yes, that's standard process. If we had a concern, we would contact you.
I know the answer to the next question, but what was the disciplinary action that the firm took against the people that were written up in Part A?
You know, I don't really have that information. Again, this is not my practice area, and it's not something that the firm has talked about at the partner meetings, specifically. So I don't know if what the disciplinary action there was. Obviously, we have a response.
Could you find out and give me a call and just let me know? You don't have to, you don't have to tell me, exactly what they did or who the people are, but just like to know whether you had some follow-up and whether the firm had follow-up, whether there were repercussions. Because I think most of the firms have follow-up and have repercussions.
Right,
Because I'm sure yours did as well, so just, Good.
okay.
Great.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd add for everybody is this review process we're talking about is related to firms that do public company audits. And so this was a review of what your firm has, if I read it right, has like 10 public company audits, is that right?
Yeah, we don't do a lot, but yes, I don't know the exact
And-
number.
So then they reviewed a couple, so, this is, not any non-public.
Right.
Doesn't cover any non-public audits, let's put it that way.
Joe, is there any process for a review of similar to this for the audit for the towns you audit? I mean, is there any body that comes in, as does GASB have a parallel group or?
No, I mean, the only review would be by like the federal inspector general, but none of our clients get enough money to warrant the feds actually coming and reviewing work papers, and that's more focused on the single audit, the federal single audit money. So there's nothing at the state level. It's just our internal process, both the quality control process over the report, work papers, and then we have internal inspection, again, internal every year. That every partner is selected, at least one engagement. And that's reviewed internally, but there isn't anything formally externally except if somebody got $25 million or something, that the federal government may want to send somebody out to do a separate audit, but that would be the only case.
Has the town of New Canaan ever been selected for your internal review?
I'd have to,
Yeah, but I mean, just at least since you've been on it, I mean, the last couple of years. When they review you, have they presumably review an audit? Have we been the subject of that review?
I'll say not in the last couple of years. I'd have to go back and look because I don't remember, but definitely not in the last several years. New Canaan wasn't one of the ones that was.
I know the last couple of years. That's cool. That's fine. Thanks. Appreciate it. Any questions on the PCOB report? Good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. How about the RFP process? Where do you want to go with that?
So in the two aspects we have are the internal and the independent audit.
Right.
We have the document for the internal audit, but in thinking about where the town is right now and the changes that we're making and are continuing to make, based on what this committee wants to do with the audit, I want to make sure that it's actually worth it to bring someone in now, because you're going to be auditing processes that are changing. So the typical places or typical areas that Joe had brought up and that I've seen is, the park and recs, transfer station, DPW, they're all building department, they're all under change right now. Within the next month or two, they're going with the new software system. So the process is going to completely change. So I was thinking more about what's the timing of an internal audit versus, are you looking at that by January? Are you looking at for next year? Because we just changed park and rec, so we're writing up those processes because they're slightly different. Once we go to the new online permitting, that's going to be a completely different process for us again. How we take the money in, credit cards online, things like that. So I wanted, if I know which direction you want to go in, it may not be the right time to actually put one in and audit processes that aren't
Well,
finalized.
typically, my experience would be that when you're changing, if you have access to an audit, internal or external, you know, that they can review the system you're putting in. It's sort of one of the questions I had with, I think you had sent us a note and you said you changed the system in the transfer, in the town transfer station, right? And I was just wondering, who is it that's actually reviewed the controls of the new system to make sure it's working? So if we had an internal auditor, they could take 3 or 4, take 1 or 2 of those 5 or 6 things you mentioned and actually review the controls before you put them in, so you don't, to make sure the controls work and help you be a resource to you. And so, you know, that would be something that the internal auditor could do. But nonetheless, I think it's going to take a long time for us to hire somebody. We have to interview them. They have to get into their schedule. So I mean, even if we had somebody hired today, I mean, I couldn't imagine they'd be ready. They'd have staffing to start, you know, for a while. So my sense would be I'd get them out.
Okay.
I'd send them out and let's get some responses back, you know, then we have to interview them, you know, you know, we're never gonna have a slow period. So then we have to interview them, we have to go together, we have to pick them. And then we have to qualify them. And so, you know, well, that takes time. And so let's get that done. Then we can tell them, hey, you know, this is, you're gonna start on March 1st or June 1st, as the case may be, and we can pick that when we go forward. The other thing I'd like to do on the internal audit is, because conversation we had about the scarcity of firms that might respond and the scarcity of resources. I've been thinking about it, and I think we should include, we should take a look, and I can do it for you, you can do it. The neighboring towns in New York State. So, you know, Pound Ridge and, you know, whatever towns need to be audited, because a lot of what the internal law is doing is control based, and they wouldn't have to be knowledgeable about, you know, Connecticut governmental accounting, as long as they understood governmental accounting. So we might be able to tap into a base of resources that has more people. But if we get somebody that's equally qualified in Connecticut, we should hire that person. Well, just so we have a sort of enough people responding. I mean, you know, if we just have one, you know, I don't think I'd be comfortable with changing from PKF as the external auditors and having them be the only firm to respond as the internal auditors. That doesn't seem like it's a particularly robust, holistic, you know, process. So then we could at least compare it to somebody from New York State. If that gave us, no one might respond from New York State. You know, that's a possibility as well. I'm just trying to think where people might respond from. Sean, do you have any sense of how boards of eds are doing any of this, or you any?
I mean, it does happen proactively, you know, we could ask for, you know, go out for an RFP and.
But the firms that are out there, basically, there are, Joe, there's only really 2 firms doing audits, right, in the state now, yourselves and who's the other firm?
Yeah, there's 3. Probably McGladrey does a decent amount. CLA is, it probably does the most.
What's the name for that?
It's Clifton, Larson, Allen.
Well, they bought out Bloom Shapiro. They bought out Bloom Shapiro.
Bloom Shapiro.
But so I think 2 things. One, we ought to broaden it out, go to some of the New York towns. You know, the last time we did it, we actually had a firm that came in from Pennsylvania. They were okay, but actually the 2 principals got, you know, very sick, and then I think ultimately, one or maybe even both, you know, passed away. It's been a couple of years now, but that's my recollection. Totally unrelated to the audit, obviously. But because, you know, it really is control based. I mean, they did work in the cafeteria fund. It's my recollection, maybe wrong. So, you know, but I think in terms of the new systems you're putting in, make it easier for you. Some of those we could just say, hey, go in and make sure all the controls are working before we put it in.
That would be typical.
Yeah. That's what normally happens with, you know, particularly if you have a department. So, and that would be fine from my standpoint.
So it occurred to me as you're talking, I have a contact that she was an internal auditor for Westport, and she retired and now is doing that on the side. I'll send you that name. Again, she's by herself, but she has a good perspective. She was internal auditor in Trumbull for a while and then went to Westport. So at least that you get her information and talk to her, she might be something that could help.
Yeah, actually, Chuck and I were talking about that before we came into the meeting today about, you know, is there somebody like that might be out there, somebody individual person or two that actually has an internal audit activity. You know, with
Okay, yep, I'll grab her contact and send it to you after the meeting, but which,
And then I think, I mean, we're actually 6 months into the new year, right? Well, not 6 months, we're actually, 4 months into the new year. So by the time we went through and had an RFP process on the external auditor, I mean, we would be 7 months into the year, so, that would be clearly, we shouldn't wait too much longer than that, right? I mean,
No, we got a template from another town. We didn't have a template for an external auditor. We got a template for another town that we're working on.
Good.
Changing it and customizing it to Canaan, and then we'll just have it reviewed by legal.
Good.
And then when you get some drafts, you can
Send
circulate.
us the
Sure.
draft, yeah. When do you think we could mail these out? What's today, the 15th, today's
11,
12th,
11.
11. 12th.
The external one, I'm not sure because I just need to get the schedule on our outside attorney.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's got a lot of other contracts on his plate right now. The internal one, I probably, I'll send it to you for review, and then within that, I probably can get it out in the street with it.
By November 1st,
Yeah.
in 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2-3 weeks.
But even the external one, I love attorneys, but I'm not sure necessarily what if the firms have a template for responding. I mean.
They do, but then they look at the contract side of it as well, so they review that for us, going out the door to make sure we're in compliance. You make sure we have the appropriate things that we want to have in place, whether insurance coverage, other additional things, not just the template of itself,
Yeah,
but
okay.
just to make sure from a compliance side that we
Yeah,
have.
but my point being is that the 3 firms that are gonna respond, they all have that.
The
Sure,
the
yeah,
responders. as we
Yes,
say.
I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. All right, then. So November 1st, we can send those 2 things out. Got that.
Well, it'll definitely be internal. I just want to make sure that the external may be another week or so after that.
Okay, another week after that?
Yeah.
November
One
1st and
other
November 8th.
question, if I could, I think I might have noted, with respect to the internal audit, just from our planning going forward, is there any possibility of maybe getting copies of internal procedures that other towns might follow? For example, Westport, I think, who has an internal audit function. And, they've got internal procedures about how they go, selecting things to review, about reports, about follow-up, about, all that kind of stuff. If there was some possibility, maybe Greenwich, some possibility of getting our hands on some of the existing internal procedures they might have that we might be able to develop here.
Reach out
and
again.
not
I did
start-
reach out for when I wanted to try and get the internal audit template and the external, and I wasn't getting replies from them.
And it's nothing to do with the RFP.
No, but just, the process, some of them said we haven't done an internal audit for many, many years. So if Greenwich
Well,
has.
well, I
done
mean,
one,
I know
reach
I know
out
Westport,
specifically.
and Joe, you probably maybe know,
Yeah.
but I know Westport has, because I was reading, they had a little problem. And they have an internal audit function and they have procedures and they had some deficiencies and they were working on trying to fix it. And I would imagine maybe some of the bigger towns like Greenwich maybe might have.
I know Greenwich for a while did not have an internal audit function. And so I know they were trying to replace that person.
Yeah. But if there's anybody that you contact with that might have an internal audit function and procedures, it might be useful to try to get our hands on to have that
We
started.
don't have to reinvent it.
That's all. We don't have to.
okay.
I think we need something like that as we progress. So.
Yeah.
I would
Just so you know, Westport's outsourced internal audit because we're on that list. It's outsourced, kind of what they don't have anyone internally doing that anymore. It's outsourced to multiple firms.
Right, but I know I read a bunch of stuff where they had procedures and they had some deficiencies on their follow-up and all that.
Okay.
So to the extent they did. I don't know any other towns, quite frankly, that do.
From
right? that have,
Trumbull and Fairfield both have internal audit processes. I'm not sure if they have those formal procedures, but they have internal auditors, so.
whatever.
I-
if you can get
You ask them to see if they have, any kind of procedure manual or procedure doc.
anything that would help.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, I can help with that.
Okay, so the sort of the last item on the agenda, item 5, I mean, I think 6 and 7, we can move through quickly, but is really the monthly financial statements, I guess, the town. Yours are still waiting approval of next Board of Finance meeting on the
We
19th.
did last night, so I just gave you a printout. I know it's quite soon for you to look at it, so I just gave you a printout so you could see it.
Oh, I see,
Yeah,
okay,
there's
great.
the
Yeah,
first
and-
quarter and the summary highlights that our budget manager, Josh Hoffman, put together. Summary
Are
of
there
where
any
we're at.
anomalies to note or things that are out of line with?
No, we actually had, the major highlight is the fund balance, instead of using 5.5, we're using 1.2. So we had, and the main items were investment income because of the rates going up.
Right.
Collection rates was still strong. And conveyance fee and some permits were less than we had budgeted, but it's mainly the investment and taxes. And then also I said the 700,000 for FEMA and COVID reimbursements.
So collections, July, August were, well, I mean, we have until the end of July to pay, right, taxes, so.
Yes.
this-
That was good.
all above
Oh, yeah,
end
they're
of
on target. Oh, yeah,
Yep.
they're on target. Yep. Definitely on target.
And I know Sean, they sent around,
Yep.
he sent around the year-end report.
Yeah,
So
so-
he was gonna give a little
Yeah.
summary of that.
Sure.
I'll do a
Want
semi.
to do that now? Good.
I do have a copy here if anybody didn't see it, we posted it. in
I got it. Yep.
September.
I'll take it when we finish. That's okay.
Yeah, I can get it right here.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Kevin, want a copy?
Thank you.
You've seen it, right, Brian?
Oh, my gosh, running out of was.
Okay, the highlights of the year-end report, and again, this is prior to this $87,000 entry that we still have to make, so that will reduce the surplus by that amount. So as of June 30th, our operating fund actual 98,383,999, which includes $340,000 of encumbrances, represents 99.3% of our full year 23 budget of 99.1 million. Results in a surplus prior to the $87,000 entry of $669,000. So with that 87, we'd be down to $582,000 surplus returned to the town, 0.6% of budget. The year-end close included 3 budget transfers, one related to the internal services fund, where our claims were higher. And when we did an analysis of our reserve funding policy required that we needed another $193,000 into our internal services fund. So that was,
Are all those claims for sort of health, medical? Opposed to,
oh, they what?
are they all health and medical related claims?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, definitely. And then there were 2 other transfers, typical year-end transfers from one major object code to another. One was for $141,000 in total, and one was $367,000 net. There's a comment in that document on page 2 that talks about a non-lapsing account for COVID. So the town had provided some funding for COVID-related expenses. And as per the agreement, when the fund was established, we would return any unused funds. So $143,000 has been returned to the town, unused funds. Federal and state grants, total for all grants awarded in full year 23 was a little over $3 million. The district spent 1.7 or 58% of those grants in full year 23, leaving a balance of 1.3, of which almost every penny of that is available for carryover into full year 24. School lunch, on pages 11 and 12 in that document. Overall, the school lunch program continued to rebound from the impacts of COVID, and including the current inflation. Full year revenue for 23 was 2.7 million versus a budget of 2.55. So we exceeded our revenue budget by 180,000. Year to year, our revenue was up 11%. On expenses, we incurred 2.6 million versus a budget of 2.46. So we went over a little bit, about $180,000 over budget. Year to year expenses increased by 12%, reflecting inflationary pressures across the board, including groceries, dairy, and beverages. Our net profit was $89,000 versus a budget of 92, so we fell short by a few $1,000s. And not included in these numbers are the expenses for health, life, disability, workers' comp of about 400,000 that we cover in the operating fund. Facilities rental donations. For rentals, the district generated $229,000 in revenues for full year 23. Total expenses related to that was 252, producing a net loss of 23,000, which is attributable to a lighting upgrade at the high school auditorium. So we carry over the balance, and if we have available funds, we can use that to improve the facilities that we are in fact renting.
Who sets the rental rate when you rent out facilities?
We do.
Board of Education.
Board of Ed,
And we've just reviewed it in the past year.
and so, and that, you have a rate card, so to speak, and
Yes.
if you're billed for Ed,
If you're a town, if you're a nonprofit. out of
that's the
town,
rate card. Yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody gets charged the rate card.
Yes. Yes, there's no exceptions.
Right.
Donations, the district received donations totaling 631,000 in 23, which is up 9% from full year 22. These funds are used to enhance academic programs for the district, supplement the athletic and visual performing arts function, purchase of materials, books, renovate playgrounds, and courtyards, and in general beautify school facilities. The 600,000 does not include the 350,000 related to a donation for the planetarium. We received that in early July, so that'll be reflected in next year's report. And those are pretty much the highlights.
What was the two budgetary or financial areas that, you know, as you look at it, you felt like you could have done a better job, forecasting or budgeting, or what were, you did all this, what were the two areas that you were most disappointed about in terms of
Okay, well, I'm
not having?
disappointed that we didn't accrue the 87,000, so I'm very disappointed with that. The other one is probably we could do a better job, and it's always been difficult is to estimate where we're gonna land in utilities. But we are doing very well with utilities. We did LED upgrades across the board. That, reduces our energy footprint significantly, like significant double digits. We've also installed solar in all of our schools. So we just added more at the high school, which got turned on, I think it was in July. These are power purchase agreements, which means that we buy the energy from the company that installs the solar, maintains the solar. And we're purchasing electricity for anywhere from 3.5 to 4.5 cents a kilowatt hour, which is tremendous.
So all the schools have got it now, right?
All of the schools have solar,
Did the
yes.
roofs, yeah.
And each school has a different, because of the timing, has a different rate, but they're
Right,
all
yeah.
pretty nice, 3.5 to 4.5.
There's still some real estate out there.
Is there? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And so the schools district has that, but does the town have any?
We lock in our rates, and the schools benefit from it. We locked in a 3-year contract to buy electricity, so I think at 11 cents. And that's supplemented by the reductions we get from solar and things. So we measure how much we're going to buy based upon how much we're going to produce with solar and stuff.
Do we ever?
We have a
Do we ever market or tell the citizens?
we have an energy consultant.
No, but do we ever tell the citizens of New Canaan Market, sort of our accomplishments in this area?
Yeah, we're thinking about this year to really make it one of the cornerstones of the budget. But we really, from propane buses to solar to CHP, to natural gas, propane at West, that whole portfolio has driven down our costs and our carbon footprint at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think it's really a great story.
But I mean, when you say in the budget process, but I mean, I don't know, I would send a letter home. I mean, this may not be the right approach, but send a letter home to everybody or, put it on a website or, get the.
Yeah, we'll get some press around this.
Yeah, that's exactly what, because it's a good story, right? You might as well get it out there, and probably other things.
And we have CHP at Saks, which had some troubles, hiccups in the beginning, but now is on, and we're looking at installing CHP at the high school, which will.
So when I said two, I already had heard about the 87s. What was the other one you were gonna tell me about? I said two areas that you.
Oh, 2 areas. Well, the one area is the 87. The second one is.
Yeah, but so is there a
They're on
third, is there a
utilities.
third? Anything else?
We can do better. We can always do better with utilities. There's a lot of opportunity.
And I just throw out the pandemic continues to disrupt the labor market.
I was gonna ask you that because I saw your
Pandemic inflation,
your cafeteria salary costs were up. Was that right? There was a line there where how is it in terms of hiring and retaining people, post the pandemic? It's difficult.
We're almost fully hired now. It's a challenge.
Yeah. Challenge everywhere. I mean,
It's a challenge, outside of the unionized folks, or the folks that aren't, that can have more mobility in their role and more negotiation in their salaries.
Right.
That's costing. This is a byproduct of a shortage of labor and an increase in. So that's just, it's not a fault, but it's a challenge.
Yeah.
Do you have an adequate pool of subs?
We tried something creative this year with our subs, where we actually increased the daily rate after, if they're in 3, 4, or 5 days in a week. So we're gonna get a report this afternoon, get some feedback to see how that's working, but trying to take a strategic approach, because what we were doing, just a flat rate across the board, meant Mondays, Fridays, and any other days around holidays, forget it, right? So now we're incentivizing.
Sounds smart,
more
yeah.
participation, and it should be, hopefully it's showing.
It's a highly competitive area. The
That's
substitutes
what I've
look at
heard,
the
yeah,
rates
yeah,
across the districts.
Yeah.
So it's important to provide incentives.
Kevin, is the town having a challenge hiring people? And I mean, I don't.
We've been having trouble because people get bought back by their employers and stuff. So there's been some of that, but it's very competitive in a lot of areas.
Okay, thanks. Good job. I think we're getting pretty close here to the last inning. Overview of the budget process. Anything, Ann, you want to highlight on that? And
Nothing major at the moment.
okay, and then other matters, including adjournment. Other matters? Anybody have any other matters?
I have one matter.
Sure.
So I won't be here for the next meeting. This is my last audit committee meeting.
You won't be here for the next meeting?
No.
The public can come.
Public can come. But I just want to take the opportunity to thank you. I've worked with most of you for the past 6 years. And it's been a great partnership, and I appreciate all the support that you've given, because, making sure our financial integrity and our financial statements are accurate is important for management, and audit committee has been a huge partner in making that happen. And I appreciate also for the benefit of our residents and also for our debt holders. And so I want to thank you all, and I want to thank Joe and Ian, and we've had a really, really good experience working with you. So thank you.
Well, I had lost track of the calendar in terms of when the election is and so on, but or in fact, I don't even, when the first select person is elected, does that transition happen the next morning?
November 21,
November
2 weeks
21,
after the election.
2 weeks after the election.
Before next meeting.
So is there some correlation between us receiving and drafting a report on November 24th? But just always the auditor, right?
Right.
But no, Kevin, we got a great town, and in every aspect of it, and the leadership of the town, including yourself, for the past 6 years has done a terrific job. And it's Retiring is tough, I know. I'm still an auditor at heart. You'll be a first selectman at heart forever, so, you
Right.
know.
Thank you.
So great, but it's not, but you and I have known each other twice in your retirement.
right.
Once from Merrill Lynch and once from here, so you'll find, you'll improve your golf game.
That's right.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for those kind words.
Yeah.
With that, Ed, did you say we're adjourned?
What I'd just like to say to Kevin, I've watched the town I've lived here since 1981. A lot of first selectmen. You have been one of the best leaders this town has had. The combination of your business experience and your personal commitment has been impressive to watch, and thank you. With that, I'm ready to adjourn.
Did you have a second? Yep. We're all in favor?
Yep.
Thanks all. Appreciate it. Thanks,
Thank
Kevin,
you.
again.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Brian.